Hello, welcome to this video on the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, a collection of teachings on spiritual awakening. We have seen now the 112 so-called instructions on awakening, 112 means to awaken, to expand consciousness, to awaken. Now in that tantra, that dialogue between Shiva and Devi, between the god and the goddess, is come the time for conclusion. That conclusion on the part of the god starts with verse 138. And I continue and I will translate at the same time. Priye, O dear one. Yadā, when. Catuṣṭayam, when those four things, parikṣīṇaṃ, are completely destroyed. When those four things are completely destroyed. Mānasaṃ, what is of the mind. Cetanā, what is attention. Śaktir, what is power. Ātmā, and the self. Tadā, then, when those four, the mind, the power, the self, and attention, are completely destroyed, then tad bhairavaṃ vapuḥ, then there is the body of the divine, the body of the absolute, universal consciousness, the source of all, beyond all. Here we have quite a long commentary. And the commentator says, Rahasyam Shrinu, hear the secret. Svatantraha nityaha parameshvara, the Supreme Lord is eternal, is always, and is absolutely free. Tasya etadeva svatantriyam, and that only is his absolute freedom. Tat dehendriyadibihi jivadaśābhyupagame kridanakaihi khelnam kadachit, that he plays the game of manifesting the body, the sensations, the mind, and he identifies with them. So it means that the four things mentioned in the verse 138, what is of the mind, attention, power, and the self, are the four types of phenomena that consciousness can identify with. The body, inner sensation, the mind, and nothingness or unconsciousness, like in deep sleep or in fainting. Kadachit swasvarupa vishrantya bahyaspandanam parityaja. Sometimes he withdraws into himself and he let go of outer movement. And he goes to rest in his own freedom. That is, he realizes his freedom. pratisthita spandabhyupagamaha. Then there is the realization of the eternal vibration, of the eternal movement, of the foundational act of all particular movements. There is a distinction between vishesha spanda and samanya spanda or pratisthita spanda. The eternal movement, the movement that is not moving from there to there, but a movement that is without moving, a vibration, like a vibration. That's the first meaning of spanda. Sushuptiyadivat. And for example, that happens in deep sleep, etc. When the phenomena disappear and the self withdraw consciousness, universal consciousness, withdraw into herself, as it were, like a tortoise withdrawing its limbs inside its shell. Etc. means states that are like deep sleep, like states of coma, fainting, death, all states of unconsciousness where the mind and internal sensations and the body and the world have disappeared, and like also states of samadhi like the samadhi of Patanjali, a state of pure consciousness which is resembling a state of pure unconsciousness because there is no movement, no content. But it's not universal consciousness. It is a gesture for universal consciousness of freedom, that is, of disidentifying with this and that. But this is not absolute freedom. This is not perfect, complete realization, because in those states I realize I have the direct experience that I am not this or that I am not the body, that I am not the mind, but I am still under the spell of Maya, because I still feel and believe that all this is not me, is not the absolute, is not universal consciousness. Whereas in truth and in full realization, everything is consciousness. Everything is the one bliss, the one expansion, the one vibration. So in those states of samadhi, you do only half the work. You stop identifying yourself with this and that, but you still have the belief that consciousness is not everything, that this is not consciousness, that is not consciousness, which is ignorance, because everything is consciousness. There is nothing outside of consciousness, there is nothing inside consciousness that is not consciousness. So all is consciousness. And as consciousness is bliss, chidananda, everything is bliss. If you don't experience that, if you don't have that direct experience that everything is bliss, even pain, as we've seen, then this is not realization as it is believed to be here. It is not Shiva Vyapti. It is a partial realization. Next verse, 139. Devi, O God, O Goddess, uktaṃ, I have said, śatam, 100, dvādaśābhyadhikaṃ, and 12, upadeśānāṃ, instructions, direct instructions, upa, intimate, essential instructions, concise, nistaraṅga, about deep peace, literally about what is waveless, nistaraṅga. Samāsataḥ, I have said them all. Yajñātvā, knowing that, knowing those 112 instructions about the waveless, jñānavij janaḥ, one becomes someone, or the person who knows them becomes a person who has knowledge, who knows knowledge. Jñānavij, someone who knows knowledge. Atra, cha, and here among those 112 instructions, caikatame yukto uktaṃ, practicing only one of them, or practicing only one of them. Jāyate, one becomes, literally one is born. Bhairavaḥ, divine. Svayam, directly. One becomes divine. One becomes the divine himself, herself. Jāyate, one is born again, you could say. That person who has become divine, karoti, does or acts, vācā, by his word. That is, whatever he says comes to pass. Karmani, he does actions. Vācā karoti karmani. He does things just by saying, like a benediction or a malediction, śapa anugraha, or whatever things he can just his word become true, and therefore what he says has the power to become real. Śapa anugrahakaraka, he does by his word blessings and benedictions and curse, śapa. Ceti, he goes ajjaramaratam, to a state of being without sickness and without death. Sonimadigunanvitaha, he becomes ornamented by supernatural powers, like becoming infinitely subtle, etc., because consciousness is infinitely subtle. Yogininam priyaha, he becomes dear to the yoginis. So here, the yoginis are not the girl practicing yoga in yoga studios, but rather supernatural beings who have the power to bestow, to grant supernatural powers and other things and spiritual realization. But they can incarnate, they can possess yoga girls and any girl, any woman. So they can act through ordinary women, incarnate women. Devi, O goddess. Sarvamelapakadhipaha, he becomes the king of all their meetings. So in the Tantric non-dual Shakta traditions, there is the custom of practicing kinds of symposiums or banquets or orgies, you could say, meetings, melapa. A mela is a festival, is a fair, is a meeting, and here it's a meeting, kind of rivalry, you could say, and in which supernatural beings, spiritually realized beings, come to possess the adepts, the initiated adepts, men and women, siddha yogin, and it's considered to be a very special communion and a very powerful one to reach all sorts of realization, the ordinary ones like the power to become infinitely subtle or to find treasuries underground, or the supreme realization, which is the realizing that everything is consciousness. In his commentary, Shivopadhyaya gives quite many quotes from the Vedic tradition. Of course, the Vedic tradition is considered quite base in the hierarchy of traditions according to the Tantric non-dual um, religion. But in the time of Shivopadhyaya, 17th, 18th century and onward, um, at all levels, the tantric community was completely a minority in a state of in a very fragile state on its path to extinction, and now it is extinct. It has been all the people have been physically killed or censored or whatever. So it's all gone, and in the time of Shivopadhyaya, he probably felt very much the need to justify himself in front of the orthodox Vedic scholars. Jivanapi, even though he lives, that realized adept who is practicing those 112 instructions, or one of them, he lives and still vimuktaha asau. He is completely free. He lives, but he is free of all the ailments of life. Kurvannapina chettam. Even though he acts, he doesn't act. He is not busy. Even though he acts, he is not busy. So all those paradoxes are very classical ones. But here they're given a special meaning in Kashmir Shaivism, in non-dual tantric tradition. It means that it's no longer the individual alone acting, but it's rather again the universal consciousness acting in that individuals through that person knowingly, not anymore in self-forgetfulness, but in full self-awareness. So there is a public, ordinary identity, doesn't change, but deeper there is that all-powerful identity, that insight, that feeling, that deep feeling that I am universal consciousness, that everything is me, everything is a manifestation of me, not me as an individual, but me as universal consciousness. And then the goddess continues with a question, a new question. Shri Devi Uvacha, the goddess said, Iram yadi vapuḥ deva paraya, parayascha maheshvara. If that is the supreme essence, if that is the essence, the body, the substance, the reality of the supreme consciousness of me, because in fact the goddess is consciousness, so she's asking in fact about herself because she is self-awakening, and the god is the answer that she herself is, and the goddess is just the self-awareness of the god. So there are just two aspects of the same reality. The god is being and our reality, and the goddess is the self-awareness of that being. And then she will ask, if that is the case, if I am really that, then what about rituals? Because you remember that Tantric traditions are full of rituals. That's the way of mantra, and mantra is mainly a formula to be spelled out during a ritual, and it's full of ritual. It's almost only rituals. So if the goddess is that, just that presence between two thoughts, between two breaths, if everything is consciousness, then what's the need for all those practices? That's what the goddess asks, and that's what the god will answer, and we will see that next time. That's all for today. Thank you for listening, and see you.